The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Good evening and welcome everyone into the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate you all joining us here for this Wednesday evening, or if you're checking us out later on after the recording as well too. Happy Star Wars Week / pre-May the 4th to all of those who celebrate. We appreciate you taking some time out of your busy Star Wars schedule in a galaxy far, far away to join us to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world of sports today. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey. And Kelcey, last year for this episode, we went a little bit heavy on the Star Wars, talking about some of the own lightsabers and things like that we'd like to see. Probably won't quite go that far today since it's not officially May 4th, but definitely got to take some time to celebrate the holiday for all those who do celebrate.
Yeah, you know, I gotta say, we didn't pull out our lightsabers for this one. We actually have gotten lightsabers since the last episode. I probably should have. Now that I think about it, I probably should have came prepped and ready with that one. But you know what? We're not gonna go too heavy on the Force on this one. But yeah, it's just some days so we got to nerd out sometimes, and maybe this year isn't the one because it's not May the 4th, but we'll still give you a little nerd.
There's a statute of limitations on our nerdiness, and it probably draws a line somewhere right around there. But we definitely got a very fun, action-packed show today. We're going to talk a little about the NBA, which, yes, guys, we do talk about basketball. I know it's been a few weeks with NFL draft stuff since we've really touched too much base on it. We got that, plus we got, of course, a little bit of the NFL draft. The reactions, some good, some bad, and a little bit of ugly, and some wild predictions. And you know what? We're just going to call it tomfoolery for Crunch Time. We're not going to spoil it too much. We'll call it tomfoolery. I think that kind of summarizes everything that we have for Crunch Time. So you're definitely going to want to stick around and see what we have coming up. And you know what? I think just the look on your face from that one, I think tomfoolery might even be understated. Maybe we should just go with pure blasphemy in some case.
You know, maybe we should call it blasphemy. Maybe we should call it shenanigans. Maybe we can call it Lance Stevenson reincarnated, potentially, if we want to get really down to it. But yeah, we can call it a lot of things, but I don't know. We'll come up with something eventually.
We will definitely cross that bridge when we get there. But first off, that's going to take us now into the first segment of our show. That is, of course, known as the tip-off. And for the tip-off, brought to you by SeatGeek, of course, use code BellyUpSports for $20 off your first order on SeatGeek. Go check out some of these wonderful sporting events in person or concerts or just about anything that requires seats. So we're going to start off in the association. We're going to keep it close to home and simple with that one. And it's been we've missed a lot since we last started talking about basketball. Really, the first round is pretty much wrapped up. Round two, some teams are already pretty much dead in the water. Some still alive and kicking, and some, well, we just have to wait and see. But we're going to go and start with a little bit of a round one recap. The surprising thing for me is a number 1 seed and a number 2 seed go down. We see the 8-seeded Heat gentlemen sweep the Bucks. I know the games were kind of close in some cases, but a 5-game sweep, a 5-game gentleman sweep, 8-1. Giannis, a potential MVP candidate, had a rough series. Yeah, he wasn't able to get loose, and the rest of the team around. Drew Holiday didn't look quite all-world point guard like he has. Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez had moments, but it was Jimmy Butler is just Jimmy Butler. And I feel like the Heat and Jimmy Butler seem to be the Bucks' kryptonite the last handful of years, minus that one time that they were swept, ironically enough.
Yeah, that one time. But yeah, no, it is kind of weird how I don't know if it's Jimmy B or if it's Spoelstra at the end of the day. I mean, we always talk about, coaching being an impact on the playoff side of things. But don't get me wrong, Jimmy Butler is a fantastic player, and he really carries that offense that is completely inept at times. But also, I want to say Kyle Lowry still playing not like the sarcastic playoff Kyle, but like the real playoff Kyle. It's kind of surprising. And then, on the other side of things, you wonder, Chris Middleton, where you at? Drew Holiday, wait, what are you doing? Giannis, like he did what he could, but when you're the one man wrecking ball, it doesn't always work out. And also, I gotta give credit to what credit's due there. Bam did a fantastic job, and in a matchup that we talked about last year, being like, hey, he could take advantage of this matchup if he just attacks the basket. Well, guess what he did this year? He attacked the basket, and then and so it actually is something that is really nice to see that you saw it from Bam finally. It only took a couple years, it feels like, but that's that's not the only player that's taken a couple years for them. The things we talk about for them to finally come to fruition. Looking at you, Anthony Davis. But it's I will say it was surprising, I guess, to see the Bucks lose, but at the same time, I don't ever count out the Heat. That's like the one I just never count them out for the ever. And along that line of surprises, I guess I'm not surprised by it, but I guess a lot of people might say they're surprised by it, and that's the Kings and Warriors going 7. Again, I called this that it would go 7. I said the Kings would win. Well, okay, I was wrong, but you know what? It was actually I didn't even say who would win. I said I don't want to pick because I don't want to show my bias. But yeah, the Kings obviously losing out on that one. The Warriors taking the victory in 7. But you got to say that was one of the better series we've seen in a long time. From top to bottom, blowouts on both sides, close games on both sides, last second shots on both sides that missed. So yeah, it was absolutely great showing from top to bottom, and we'll be interested to see what the Kings can do going into next year too.
Well, I'm not biased, so I'm going to go in on this one a little bit as well too. And that beam should have been lit one more time. My problems with that series were De'Aaron Fox getting injured just kind of sucked. Obviously, he still played through it, didn't miss any time, and he still was effective. It's just you could tell he was a 9 out of 10 as opposed to his normal 10 out of 10 self. And to beat the Warriors, you need to be 10 out of 10 with your best player, especially when he's going head to head with Steph Curry, the absolute chef this entire series. That game 7, one for the ages. In my lifetime, top 5 playoff game I can remember as an individual performance as well. Maybe top 10 for sure. I still like his game 4 against the Celtics last year, considering what was on the line and the fact that his teammate was so visibly shaken by the crowd that Steph literally took it all on his back so Draymond could get out of his little thing he was in, is what we'll call it. So I'll say last year's. So that's 2 postseasons in a row where Steph's had a potential all-time great game, which crazy to think that he technically only, out of his 4 finals, he has 1 finals MVP, and most people called him like the quote-unquote most overrated superstar because of that. Yet 2 all-time great performances. So that game 7, absolutely incredible. A great series from him as well. My problem is after the game, after it was 2-0, the Kings were up. You saw a lot of the national coverage of it saying like that the refs were dictating this series. The reason the Kings were up was because of the, and then from there it spiked on its head. And obviously I'm not someone blaming refs. I'm not that ridiculous, but it is kind of like, really, you cried, you got your way, and then you're going to be like, well, the Warriors were no, they were kind of dead to rights. And then unfortunately, then they made good adjustments and then they won the series, in addition to Sabonis forgetting to play offense more, except for one half, and De'Aaron Fox injuring his finger. But that was just kind of frustrating. They're up 0-2, and then people were already saying it's the officials letting the Warriors win. But we didn't see it in reverse once the Warriors came back. When you look at the entire series, the fouls were pretty much split even. There was like the foul calls were pretty much even. So it was a lot of Weenie Hut junioring from the people who cover it. Now that they're playing the Lakers, you won't hear a sound if they start getting clapped on like they were in the first game as well. So that was my frustration. As a non-Kings fan, it's like, really, you're trying to take away the shine from the beam? That was some Weenie Hut Jr. stuff. So I disapprove of any, especially from people. ESPN, Fox, like you were considered, well, not so much anymore, but you're supposed to be considered unbiased and like a relevant source to hear from these things. And that's just anytime.
The quote worldwide leader in sports at one point in time.
Exactly. Anyone who uses officials in that sort of case, it's like, really? You're saying that's why the Kings are up 2-0 because they're beating up the Warriors? You're telling me Draymond Green's getting beat up by Domantas Sabonis, who, by the way, he's 7'1". He does not play 7'1". He plays 6'4.5" with cleats on. So, I digress. I won't go in too far on this because I'll sound like the Kings fan here. It was a great series. The Kings will be back. They are a dangerous team. They kind of remind me of the Warriors before the Warriors became the Warriors, honestly. Like how they kept having those battles with the Clippers early on before they finally took off. So the Kings will be fine. The Warriors, Steph Curry, outstanding. Show that they've never lost a series under Steve Kerr that wasn't a final series. And the fact that the Kings almost pulled that off and were within a stupidly good third quarter away from it happening, that's a kudos to the Kings, kudos to the coach here, Mike Brown, and they'll be back. They'll be fine. And the Warriors, they already clearly have their work cut out for them with the Lakers. But I'll let you touch on the beam a little bit. I've hogged a lot of the time with the beam, so you can jump in now.
I just want to, you talk about the refs, and the only thing that I really have a problem with the refs is these stupid illegal screens. And we've talked about this with the Warriors for I don't know how many years. The amount of illegal screens that happen on a Warriors offensive possession is insane. The amount that get called in a game is nearly zero on the Warriors, I should say. Kayvon Looney is the only one I've seen get really called, and they're because they're so egregious, it's ridiculous. And God forbid they call one on Draymond Green. It's almost like you just ended the world. And the amount of stuff that Draymond Green gets to talk to refs without getting a technical is also insane to me. because between the two things, if you guys didn't catch game 7, Draymond Green actually physically blocked or moving tackled or forechecked or whatever terminology you want to use for any other sport, a Kings defender at one point in time, and it was just let go. Now, don't get me wrong, it's in the middle of Steph Curry's craziness, but any little bit there, it's a 7-point game. Any little bit could possibly turn the momentum the other way. And it's just like, you're going to call these calls on the Kings, but you're not going to call an illegal screen on the Warriors when it's so egregious. You're being made fun of, Scott Brooks, for basically refereeing what turned into a hockey game. Like,
Scott Foster, right?
Scott Foster, yeah, not Scott Brooks.
So Scotty Brooks doesn't need to catch strays now. He's had to deal with it.
Yeah, my bad, Scotty Brooks. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm just so flustered here. I'm getting two subjects mixed together. I'm getting our next topic mixed up. But yeah, no, Scott Foster is obviously the bane of every opponent of the Warriors' existence, it feels like, and Chris Paul especially. But, you know, I don't want to take this down to the refs, but I do just want to point that out as far as refereeing goes. That's my one big frustration with referees is just the illegal screens and the amount of stuff Draymond gets to talk without getting a technical. We saw technicals on any other player for just like being like, what? Are you kidding me? That's a foul? Versus Draymond literally screaming and grabbing a referee and not getting a technical. So it was just like, okay, maybe figure that out. I don't know. Maybe Draymond has a way with words. Maybe he kissed the Blarney Stone 2,000 times. So he has the gift of gab. I don't know. But yeah, no, I love the fact that the Kings are back. I'm going to say they're back. And look, to see them back in the playoffs was fantastic. That was a dream come true after 20 something years of just misery. It was absolutely fantastic to see. And yeah, I mean, look, win or lose at the end of the day, I'm still a Kings fan. It's not going to change. And it's kind of nice to see also that the Warriors and Kings can kind of renew a rivalry that maybe never existed in a lot of ways, because the Warriors were always bad when the Kings were good and the Kings were always bad when the Warriors were good. So it's kind of very interesting. And it's a rivalry that I think the sport needs. And I think you talk about the state of California actually needs a Northern California rivalry. They obviously have the Clippers and Lakers down south. So why not add a little bit of extra spice to it? There no longer needs to be a Kings Jazz rivalry. I want to see a Warriors Kings rivalry. That'd be nice.
Maybe we'll get a Kings Lakers renewal. Maybe we'll get that rivalry renewed again soon.
No, I'm good. Scott Foster would referee every game in that series. I don't want to see that.
Fair play as well, but it's definitely something to keep an eye out for them on as well too. Glad to see them back, and we're going now on 8 years of please call the run blocking power O screens. But 8 years and counting is probably unfortunately not going to change right now. It's
illegal man downfield or something. Like give me some kind of football penalty on Draymond at one point in time.
It's like illegal crack block at this point. Like call something tripping, like a illegal block. Like they're anything. But the other series that we'll touch base on, we won't touch base on too many of the other ones because some of them were wipeouts as well too that weren't quite as surprising. But the one that did surprise us was the Lakers getting the upset over the Grizzlies. And I don't think it's that they upset them, because we both kind of talked about it's kind of the way they smacked them all over the place. The only time they lost is when they clearly didn't give a you know what. Followed up by a 40-point W in Game 6. Not 1, not 2, not 3, 40 in Game 6 over the number 2 seed.
I'm glad you didn't count to 40 right there, because that would have been a long time.
You know what? I forgot what comes after that, so I cut myself off there. But my problem with that one is we're gonna actually just skip ahead to the aftermath. Is Dillion Brooks kind of catching a little bit of the heat for it in some cases, rightfully so. In other cases, they've basically said you're the scapegoat, you're the reason that we lost, and now he's and I quote, under no circumstances is coming back to the Grizzlies, which I'll say that they did him dirty by making him the fall guy. As much as he deserves some of the heat, he deserves some strays, but not from the Grizzlies. Literally everyone else can throw strays at him, and that's fine. But when your own team's throwing it at you, when there's a lot of issues when it comes to the Grizzlies. They lost that series for a lot of reasons, and Dillion Brooks talking a little trash and playing meh was not one of them. There was a lot of other issues that went into that series loss. And sorry, Dillion Brooks, but you're going somewhere else, and you're going to catch all the blame for this one, and you're probably going to get a bad contract for it.
Yeah, bye, Brooksy. Like that's the biggest. I'm so excited to see this. Like I've never been a Dillion Brooks fan. Well, let me rephrase that. I was a Dillion Brooks fan coming out of Oregon. That first year coming out of Oregon, I actually enjoyed watching his game. And then it was like the switch flipped, and it was just a completely different Dillion Brooks after that. And I don't know what happened, because he forgot how to shoot, he forgot how to defend, got to do everything. He just decided to look like a scorpion on the court, and to play like a, I don't know, Robert Tractor Trailer. Okay. I don't like the fact he's catching strays from the Grizzlies organization, but I also will say, don't poke the bear if you're not ready for the results. And let's all know, the one person you don't need to give bulletin board material in the NBA is LeBron James. Just like in the NFL, you didn't give Tom Brady bulletin board material. You didn't give Peyton Manning bulletin board material. Hell, you didn't give Tony Romo bulletin board material at that point in time. Like, they'd all piece you up for giving you bulletin board material. You just didn't need to do it. But in the NBA, it is very clear the one man that you do, and I'd say two, and the Kings fans learned this as well. And Steph, you don't do it to Steph either. But really the number one as far as what he can do to a game and manipulate every single little facet of a game through a series is LeBron. You just don't do it. Just don't piss him off, because he has a way. It's not just him that he plays for. His teammates play for him. And it's kind of crazy. You talk about some of the players he's played with. He's played with some of the worst players ever to take to a finals. And yet they all still had great things to say about playing with him. Yeah, he was tough, but he was a great guy to play with for him. And it's like, that just tells you when they played with him, they were playing for him. And so it's not just LeBron you pissed off. It's Anthony Davis who gave you everything. Absolutely all the smoke. It's D'Angelo Russell who gave you all the smoke in game 5. It's Austin Reeves who gave you all the smoke in game 4. Rui Hachimura who gave you all the smoke in game 1. Like, and even that Vanderbilt, who didn't really give you a whole lot of offensive smoke, but he gave you all the defensive hell you could ever handle. So, like, I don't know why Dillion Brooks thought it was a great idea to be like, I don't care what he says until he gives me 40. Like, don't do that, because what's going to happen is he won't give you 40, but the Lakers will tell you to hold a 40-piece L.
And you'll give up 20 points and 20 rebounds. So there's a form of 40 the next day, too.
And so it's like, I look at it and I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't like him catching strays from the Grizzlies. But, man, you do not poke the bear. You do not stand on the tracks when the train is coming. Whatever analogy you want to use, you don't do it. And then you don't double down on it. Like, if he had done – if LeBron in the middle of the series, as LeBron was just absolutely piecing him apart, no longer even letting Dillion Brooks be a thing, if he had just been like, yeah, LeBron's having a great series, nothing we can do about it. It's going to be one of those things. We just got to try to stop everybody else. Okay, you're done. You're not going to catch the strays. You're not going to be that guy anymore. You're not going to be the next Lance Stevenson, which I hate to say anybody's being the next Lance Stevenson, but right now you are well on your way to being the next Lance Stevenson. And I don't, if you're going to talk the trash, you also have to accept the fact that when you lose, you have to admit the fact that you were the reason that you assisted in your team's loss. There's no culpability from Dillion Brooks so far. He is not taking culpability anywhere. The Grizzlies are just basically like, since you didn't take culpability, bye. Like, we don't need you to be part of this new grindhouse version. So, and I think that's a lot of what this message is it's more like, hey, if you're not going to take onus for what you said and what you did, we don't want you around. And the only reason I say that is because you look at the Ja Morant situation earlier this year, Ja coming out and apologizing. Ja, and then that being done kind of saved Ja's career. Plus, you also don't really trade your franchise player. But at the same time, like, that's my only consideration. Like, I look at this and be like, okay, well, he wasn't really helping Ja. He wasn't helping the team by any means. He wasn't helping out their coach by any means. So, if you're not going to take responsibility for your actions, like, what can you do for this organization going forward? And the answer is nothing. And so I don't blame the Grizzlies, but I don't like what they did at the end of the day, saying it's all his fault, basically. Like, I don't know. There's a fine line to walk there. And I think saying it's all his fault was the problem. Telling him he's not going to be there, though, I totally get.
It's like, I don't understand saying like, hey, we're going to let him test free agency, but under any circumstance, and pretty much bold underline exclamation point headlining that, like, that's where it was like, really doing a little bit.
You could be a free signing and we'd still say no. Like, oh, okay, wow.
We will sign anybody besides him. That's where it got a little bit extra. When the problems with that team still kind of lie in fact that John Morant kind of talks a little bit more trash than everybody else on that team combined. Like they follow as their leader, and their leader was nearly suspended for 50 games for IG activities, is what we will call them as well.
Yeah, extracurricular IG activities. That's a good way to put it.
And it kind of starts with him as well, too. Like he needs to be a smarter player that talks less on the court. And this is completely separate from, but he needs to quit trying to jump over people. Like, my goodness, you're so athletic. Jump around them and get a 360 layup. Quit trying to posterize everybody. You're going to hurt yourself even more. Trying to jump over LeBron, I thought he died the way he landed. He almost did a John Elway helicopter. That point. Quit trying to jump over people.
Gravity is the only thing in the world that is undefeated.
And it wins with a knockout every single time. And I don't want him to end up Derrick Rosian. I want him to be able to play for a long time and explode around people. Use that athletic ability to Euro step, to spin, to jump around them, to jump step. Quit trying to put your kneecaps on other people's faces 14 times a game.
You know, if he never needs a reason to not do that, just look at Sean Livingston and that horrific injury he had for trying to just dunk on everybody. And then thankfully, Sean Livingston learned how to play on the ground after that. But you talk about freakish athletes. He was really the first. And then you saw Derrick Rose do it as well. And then you're just like, oh, okay. Maybe we don't do that a lot anymore. Like maybe there's a reason why those type of athletes don't last long in the NBA. So yeah,
it's a freak, and he stopped trying to jump over people. Now he uses it. It sometimes is for better and sometimes for worse, but he uses it for layups and like mid range and those type of things too. He's not trying.
I wish he would use it for his mid range more.
I don't know what happened to that mid range. Probably the legs gone and that disappeared too. But he quit trying to put nuts on people's heads, and suddenly he's able to play a lot longer, and he still looks explosive. The ball doesn't always go in the hole, unfortunately, anymore, but that's a different issue. That has nothing to do with him being able to play on athletic ability. So take some notes there, take some notes elsewhere. Grizzlies, we'll see if they can bounce back next year. They were missing Steven Adams and Brandon Clark in the paint, which definitely hurts when you go with Anthony Davis. But Dillion Brooks, where do you think he's going to land next year? If I had to guess, I wouldn't be surprised to see him come to a team that really could use like a 6-man rotational piece. Maybe Philadelphia doesn't sound like a bad option either as well. A guy that can kind of spell in there when Harden comes out, something like that. So I'll go with Philly. I think he could be a useful piece and a contender, but he's not going to get that larger offensive role like he supposedly wanted as well. I think he's still got to be a 3-and-D guy for at least one more year because of the way things happen. But you think he finds another home, or do you think it's going to be a little bit rough out there for him?
Guangdong Tigers. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to say he's going to China or Japan. But I will say I do think he ends up overseas. I honestly don't know if anybody, if you think about it, like if you think about the teams that would take a Dillion Brooks right now, who really pops into your head? Like, yeah, you just mentioned the Sixers, but let's be real. Who on their starting, let's say in their starting 7 rotation, let's say in their 7-man rotation, 8-man rotation that they use for the Sixers, who does he replace that's really that he's better than? It's not going to be Shake Milton. That's probably the 8th man on the rotation. It's not going to be Gorka and Firmaz. Still better than Dillion Brooks. He can at least score. So I just like going through the NBA. If I'm looking at top 7, top 8 in the rotation, there are very few teams where I'd say he'd slide in and fit that team. And I'm talking even like 15 seeds, like 16, like the 15 seeds in both East and Western Conference. Like still don't think he's good enough the way he's been playing to do that. And I think going overseas and relearning his game, I think would definitely help him. I don't want to say he's going to go G League because I feel like once you go down to the G League from the NBA, you're kind of in that no man's land where it's tough to get back up. But I do think going overseas, we've seen it happen all the time. Somebody goes overseas and they come back and they're even better. I look at Michael Beasley when he went over to China and came back, much better player in the NBA than he was before. You've seen it time and time again. Maybe he joins his buddy in Lance Stevenson in Puerto Rico. They seem to be taking a bunch of NBA players lately. I'm just kidding, but I don't think he goes there. I do think he actually ends up in a Eurobasket team in the Euro Basketball League. But I don't know. I couldn't give you like a maybe Fenerbahce type of situation, but I do think he ends up overseas. I can't think of an NBA team that really wants to take a flyer on Dillion Brooks, considering all the stuff that's happened this year. I just don't know. Everybody seems to be trying to go PC with their team, and Dillion Brooks seems to be the anti-PC right now. So I don't know if there's a fit for him anywhere in the NBA until he can figure out his game. Because right now it looks like I'm looking at a player who doesn't know what type of basketball player he is anymore. Because if you think about Dillion Brooks coming out of college, He'd shoot threes. He'd attack the basket off the dribble, and he'd play defense. But you watch the Dillion Brooks now, I'm not getting any defense, not getting any attacking the rim. I'm getting a measly step back three occasionally that doesn't even go in over 30% of the time. So what are you actually giving me, Dillion Brooks? Because it's not assists, it's not steals, it's not secondary help or anything. So I don't know. I don't know, but I do think he ends up overseas. I just don't think I don't see an NBA team taking that risk on him. And maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it this first year.
The ironic fit is if him and Draymond end up on the same team and just throw him on the Lakers too, just to make it an absolute mess. Let's just turn it into a circus at this point as well. Like this
so many illegal screens.
So many. That's the least of their issues at that point. I mean, throw Lance Stevenson on there too. Just bring back the ticks of LeBron's past, present, and future. Just throw it all in there at once. Let's make it a circus. Hell,
I joked about the Puerto Rican League, but did you know an active players in the Puerto Rican League? There are 7 players that have either played with LeBron or guarded LeBron in a playoff series at one point in time.
Well, it looks like you're trying to make it 8, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that one as well because it's very, very possible. But that's definitely something we'll keep a lookout for as well too. And before we wrap up the topic on basketball as well, do want to give a quick note that the process has finally paid off to an extent as well as Joel Embiid being named NBA MVP for the first time in his career, finally getting past that second place in the MVP voting. Unfortunately, it comes as he's kind of hurt as well, too, so because he missed that game. But it looks like he's set to come back for their next game as well. But congratulations, Embiid, a fantastic season, a historic level season. Well-deserved MVP, and now you just got to carry him home. You stole game 1 from the Celtics without him. See if he can start to get back and lead his team there because he's been sensational. If you can get him at 90% health, they might have a good run to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even the Finals if they could get by the Celtics.
Yeah, and I agree with RJ down here. Well-deserved MVP. Honestly, probably should have happened last year. If we're being completely honest, this probably should be his second straight MVP. And look, the NBA doesn't always get it right, but they got this one right without a doubt. And we talked about this when we did our MVP commentary that there's one of 3 guys and sorry, looking at the comment. Did you you guys rave about Jimmy Buckets? You did miss us raving about Jimmy Buckets against the Bucks a little bit ago. But yeah, we'll talk about Jimmy Buckets.
Nickel and some change. We definitely touch base on that.
Yeah, don't worry. When he comes back from his injury next week, we'll talk a little bit more about him because I'm sure he'll have something to say to the Knicks here coming up soon. But yeah, no, Embiid, as far as Embiid goes, I do think this should have been the second straight or second consecutive MVP. But look, they don't get it right all the time. Maybe could have given it to Giannis this year. Who cares? I'm glad they got it. They got this one. At least he got one. And I say that knowing full well back in the day, Steve Nash, at least he got one was in favor of over Kobe. So, not the greatest moment ever, but yeah, you look back at that and they're like, oh, okay, well maybe you should have just gotten the second one, not the first one. But yeah, no. So look, I'm glad Embiid got one at least. Didn't really. I don't feel bad about either one of the other guys losing, and Jokic or Giannis. So, yeah, 100%. Love that Embiid got the MVP. Now I just need to see him beat the Celtics because any Eastern Conference Finals without the Celtics is a great Eastern Conference Finals.
And you know what? The Celtics might see some serious changes next year if they don't get by the Sixers. But that's a topic for another day. We're only one game into that series, so we'll come back to that next week. So definitely tune in for that. But now we're going to turn our attentions to Kelcey's second favorite part of every show, and that is the main event. And for the main event, we're going to go to the gridiron. And you thought draft season was over? Well, it technically kind of is. But we got to wrap it up here, and we got to put a bow on it as well too. So the NFL draft is wrapped up. We got some winners, we got some losers, we got some what are you doing, we got some look out next year. So we're going to go and start with some of these NFL draft day winners, some teams that we walked out of the draft and we're like, yeah, they made a big jump. They did pretty well. So Kelcey, I'll let you lead the way. What's one team that you, after draft weekend, you're just like, yeah, they got a lot better, like significantly better than they were going in.
I don't know if I'd say significantly better. I mean, they were just in a Super Bowl. But I got to say that the Philadelphia Bulldogs are a fantastic drafting team. I don't think they did really anything wrong on all 3 days. I think they really didn't take a step wrong. Tons of Georgia Bulldogs now in Philadelphia, helping each other find new apartments and things. Bunch of Philly cheesesteaks are about to be devoured by a bunch of dogs. So I don't know, what else you can expect there. But yeah, no, I like their picks. Jalen Carter, obviously, them ending up with Jalen Carter there. We talked about it being a potential possibility. Didn't really think it was going to happen for a while there. I got to be honest. I definitely thought he was going top 5 at one point in time with all the trades that happened. But yeah, I'm gonna start off and I'm gonna say the Eagles, well, Bulldogs, whatever they want to call themselves now at this point in time, are Philadelphia as probably one of my number one draft day winners for sure.
The Kirby Smart adjacents at this point as well too. I mean, I think at this point, whatever you want to call them, is just a direct pipeline. It's not even a pipeline to the NFL. It's a pipeline to Pennsylvania, because even all the offensive players besides Stetson Bennett went to Pittsburgh as well too, at Broderick Jones and squad. So just set from Georgia to Pittsburgh to Pennsylvania. It's a straight line at that point. But that's a good one. Anytime you get 2 top 15 caliber players in the first round, one at 9 and one at 30, and you're just in a Super Bowl with a franchise quarterback, yeah, good. I'm sorry, NFC East. That's obnoxious.
And I also want to say one of the steals of the draft in Sidney Brown.
Absolutely, as well to a high
Philadelphia. That steal on Sidney Brown that's impressive to me. I don't know how he just landed there conveniently.
And getting Keely Ringo later in the draft too, not overreaching for him with it. He's got some holes in his game, is what we'll say, but he's definitely he's still a high quality prospect that they got much later than it was anticipated to go. So a very high quality draft for them as well. So
for
me,
sure.
Yeah. For me, when I look at winners, I think technically everybody in a way can be kind of considered a winner because you added players. But for one of them, some of them that stand out to me as well, I love the Eagles one, as we mentioned. That's a huge one. I want to go with the Arizona Cardinals. I know just because you got Paris Johnson, a franchise caliber left tackle who Kyler Murray asked for. So the new regime showing, hey, we are hearing you. Here you go. Like, you're our guy, blah, blah, blah. Just because you're injured doesn't mean we're going to try and replace you. You managed to trade back and get the Houston Texans #1 pick next year on top of it, plus some other stuff from the trade backs. So you're telling me right now they're projected to have the #1 overall pick next year and the #2 overall pick next year, which I don't know if that's ever happened before. I don't think it has. We thought having the Texans ending up with 2 and 3 this year was pretty cool. Just imagine how crazy if you get that without having to trade at all, too, what they could pull off of that. So that's absolutely incredible. And with what we see in next year's draft, you mean the Caleb Williams and Drake May sweepstakes, you could potentially end up with picks 1 and 2. You could trade one of those back and get a haul. You could trade both of them back and get 2 hauls. There's so many options with that. Plus Marvin Harrison Jr., Brock Bowers, the tackles from Notre Dame, Penn State, plus the guys we don't even know about right now because it's a year away. The Cardinals are set up for absolute future success right now. And that's, if I'm them, I'm like, Kyler Murray, take the year off. We are going to stink this year, and we are going to come back and destroy everybody in a year. Just get yourself healthy. We're going to be good. We're going to get all these other guys some reps. It does not matter. Otherwise, D-Hop's probably going to get traded at some point. We're good, Kyler. You'll be fine. Just hang out. Don't get yourself hurt. Plus, you throw in the likes of B.J. Ojolari, Michael Wilson from Stanford, and some Garrett Williams, the corner from Syracuse. They had a really, really nice draft. But it's Owen Popo much later as well too. Like they're Gucci. They're looking awfully good. And if they get picks 1 and 2 next year, like it's projected, or anything similar to that, I think 3 first-round picks is the starting point for that #1 overall pick. And that's where the bidding begins. And then there's still then the bidding actually kicks in at that point. When you talk about the level of prospect Caleb Williams is as of right now, and assuming he doesn't do anything to make it worse. Same with Drake May, and maybe there's a Joe Burrow who sneaks up on us like a Quinn Ewers or something like that. Oh boy, if someone wants to trade up with the Cardinals, you're going to need a couple of Brinks trucks and some change. I don't even want to know what it's going to cost.
Way too much for me. That's for danger. But no, I do. I will say I do like the Cardinals draft, especially you talk about getting a new regime in there. It's like, hey, what do you need to do when you get a new regime in there? You got to make an impact on the draft. You also have to show that you're supporting your current players, especially your superstar players. And they did. They checked both boxes. I mean, really, they did. And then I think the Paris Johnson pick was like, yeah, obviously that's who Kyler wanted. But I also think that's a safety pick in a lot of ways because Paris Johnson, in a lot of ways, was probably the can't-miss tackle prospect because of his physicality and his athleticism. Because he's so big, because he can slide in and out, because he's played 4 different offensive line positions at one point in time. He can do it all. So if you emergency need somebody beside, like not named Kelvin Beachum to go and slide across this line, you can have that happen if you need to. But obviously he is a much better tackle. But yeah, I do think, Paris Johnson, a fantastic #1 overall pick. But I think just going out throughout this draft, fantastic. Maybe the only questionable pick, Clayton Tune. But again, if you need 3 quarterbacks on the roster anyways. So why not? If worst case scenario, you throw them on the practice squad, let them get some reps. Maybe turns into a nice piece that you can if Kyler doesn't work out, maybe you can package Clayton Tune, or maybe Clayton Tune turns into unsung American underdog type of story. Who knows? But, Kyler Murray, obviously being the guy next year, whether he'll be there or not, different story. Whether D-Hop's there, different story. We'll wait and see. But yeah, definitely like the Cardinals draft.
And for some reason, let's say they want to go after Caleb Williams, you'll have to find a way to move Kyler Murray, but you'll still probably get some picks for him as well, too. Like, I don't know how you'll move him with that contract. You'll probably have to eat a chunk of it, but you have options, which is the most you could ask for the Cardinals with the new regime, despite a tampering scenario when you're a questionable choice as a head coach. But we won't get into that right now.
Still don't get, how do you get a tampering situation on Jonathan Gannon? Like, what in the world does that get a tampering conversation?
That we don't have enough episode left for that. But that's a whole mess in itself. But we'll get
a guy that no team wanted him as their head coach until after the Super Bowl, and even then, everybody was like, "Wait, what? He just gave up that much? Nah, we're good."
Exactly. He was one that was the only opening left, and you were basically, we're not going to get into that. We'll go with one more winner each. What's one more team when you look at the NFL draft? You're like, they walked away pretty nicely.
This one's tough. I'd love what the Patriots did. I got to say, I do love what the Patriots did, but they're not going to be my other 8. They're not going to be my top grade here. I'm actually going to go with a team you're very familiar with here in the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to say the Colts ended up probably hitting this one out of the park, as close to hitting this out of the park as you could possibly do from top to bottom. Obviously, getting Anthony Richardson without having to trade up or down to get him, first of all, that was a fantastic ability there. Julius Brents, it's obviously the type of guy that the Colts love, but if he can stay healthy, is probably the big question there. But he can play. If he's healthy, he can absolutely play. Josh Downs, North Carolina wide receiver, a fantastic pickup there at 79 and in the 3rd round. You couldn't ask for better. Blake Freeland in the 4th round, I think, is a fantastic pickup. Is a very underrated guy, and a guy that made your top 50 list in Adebawore out of Northwestern, the defensive tackle, getting him basically 4 picks after Blake Freeland. You really couldn't ask for a better haul right there. South Carolina's corner, Darius Rush, probably not their top corner when Cam Smith was, a potential possibility, but you don't hate that at all. Because again, it fits what the Colts like to do defensively. So you definitely don't hate it at all. And I will say there's an underrated guy down here coming out of Wagner here, and that's the edge, Titus Leo. A guy that I wasn't very high on, but obviously I've watched a little tape on him, and I do think he's a guy that can transition to the NFL and might be that underrated, like coming out of what school type of guy, where you think Jerry Rice coming out of that, Prairie View A&M type of situation. Like it's obviously not that situation, but I don't know if it'd be that great. But you do think there's all these random players that come out of random colleges sometimes, and I think Titus Leo has a chance to put Wagner kind of in the forefront of somebody's mind here in 2 to 3 years. But I don't think it's going to be good until 2 to 3 years down the road. But I do think he has that opportunity. If he gets that opportunity for the Colts, I think he could pay off. But I'd say the Colts for all 3 days. Again, didn't really make a misstep. Maybe Evan Hull out of Northwestern. But you know what? Who cares? Like at that point in time, it's going to be your 3rd string running back. So who really cares at the end of the day?
Well, that was mine. So that was actually the next one I had too. So I'll just kind of add on to that as well. You get your franchise quarterback who's 20 years old. By the time his rookie deal's up, he's going to be Hendon Hooker's age. You get a corner that fits your cover 3 scheme to a T if he could stay healthy. You get a top 50 player from me who I thought could have been a 1st-round receiver, an absolute slot machine that also can play on the outside despite being tiny. The amount of times I saw him teabag people was absolutely insane. And how good he looked dominant with Sam Howell. He looked even more dominant with Drake May. So he's not just like a product of an elite quarterback as well too. And we'll find out too when Drake May plays without him, which I think he'll be fine, but we'll see a lot there. And then you got AA as well. A 6'3", 280-pound D lineman who ran a 4.6. Like what? And you got him so late too. The Colts are I'm trying to think of how I want to word this. You got Anthony Richardson, alien. Jelani Woods, predator. Quentin Nelson, sub 540-second refrigerator. Jonathan Taylor, yoked track star. DeForest Buckner, the Whomping Willow. This team is full of freaks who, if they can learn to play a lick of football, they're going to be like Dallas Carter from Friday Night Lights, the movie. Because walking off the bus, they are going to look terrifying. And the big is if they can play football, they are going to be absolutely terrifying just getting off of that bus. And we haven't even gotten into some of the logistics like Darius Leonard and some of those other guys as well. So I agree with you. They knocked it out of the park. Now they just got to play football. And Anthony Richardson, I agree with you. Play him from day one, assuming he's not an absolute shit show in preseason and training camp and all that. Play him day one. It's not quite the same as Trey Lance, who he needed to sit and learn a little bit. Anthony Richardson just needs reps. You watch him play. He moves the pocket really well, not just as an athlete, but actually weirdly evading people, kind of like what Bryce Young does, just not as elusive because he's 100 pounds heavier. Get him in open space. No one's touching him. Howitzer of an arm. And weirdly enough, I don't think his accuracy is quite as bad as people say it is. It's obviously not good. He has some work to do. But when you're Florida, they threw nothing under 40 yards. Everything was 4 verts or take off. It's kind of hard to have a high completion percentage when you're whipping it down the field every play. So I think there's a lot to work with. He's got a lot to work on. I think that ends up being a great pick as well, too. I think the hindsight scouting of him, I think, makes it an even better pick as well. So I'd agree with you on that one. I think they knocked it out of the park. And I don't think they're necessarily dangerous next year, but I think they're going to annoy a lot of really good teams. I don't know if they're necessarily a playoff team, especially in the AFC, which is just stupid. But I think they're going to annoy some teams. They're going to ruin somebody else's playoff hopes just as towards the end of the season, as Richardson, all the young guys get clicking, new offense, new coach, everything. They're going to piss somebody off and ruin somebody's playoff hopes down the line. I don't know who, but they're going to piss somebody off.
Yeah. So. 100%. And well, since you picked yours also the Colts, let's just shout out to the Patriots for their draft. Getting Christian Gonzalez at number 17. That's a hell of a pickup. Keon White at 46. Congratulations. Jake Andrews, 107. City Sau, who I'm very high on as an offensive guard, sitting at 117 from Eastern Michigan. Absolutely fantastic mauler of a guard. And then probably the steal of the draft, or maybe there's 2 steals here from wide receiver. Kayshon Boutte from LSU. Or Liberty's Demario Douglas. Take your pick for which one is the bigger still, but both of them a fantastic pick late in the draft.
Boutte could have been a first-round pick if there wasn't so many inconsistencies and other issues. But from a talent perspective, get the ball in his hands, and he's an absolute menace. So if they can get the most out of him, that's going to be an outstanding pick. And I'll wrap up the one other winner I was going to mention really quick. I'm looking at Seattle. You had a bunch of picks thanks to the Russell Wilson trade, and you pretty much hit on all those early ones. Devin Witherspoon, we both agreed a top 5 pick, basically a studded corner, fantastic pick. Jackson Smith and Jigba pick number 20. He's going to catch 70 balls because he's going to catch at least 70 balls because they're playing too high to stop Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and he's going to cook some nickel corners and safeties and linebackers. All Geno Smith has to do is throw those quick option routes to him. And then you got Derek Hall, your boy, the outside linebacker, D-Ed. They need to stop the run. He'll bring you that right away, and he can rush down the passer as well. Then Zach Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker is your main running back. Charbonnet is your spellback. They'll be able to close out the game running the ball very effectively as well. So Seattle, I thought, knocked it out of the park. Then you got Cameron Young, Mike Morris out of Michigan, some other good players in between, Jarek Reed late in the draft. But those top 4 picks, they were absolute home runs. So Russell Wilson doing more for Seattle while being on Denver than he had in the last few years in Seattle, it feels like. So Seattle right now, if we had to pick, I'm saying they win the NFC West. And I'm saying that with plenty of months left to go before we do predictions, and a lot of things can go wrong between now and then. But if you ask me to pick right now, Seattle's winning the West by 2 games.
I definitely wouldn't put that past them. I do think they had a great season this last year, and they just got better in the draft. And then you're giving Geno a second year with this team, and you give him a better weapon as his third wide receiver or a 1B receiver. I don't know what you want to call Jackson JSN, but he's something. And you also can get a fully healthy Noah Fant going into next year as well. I mean, yeah, definitely the Seahawks. On paper, probably the best team in the NFC West.
Absolutely.
At least right now.
And who's playing quarterback for the 49ers at this point? We have no idea. And plus the Rams, we'll see how that bounces back. And the Cardinals, we just talked about. Either way, we won't get too far into that. We're not going to
forget the return of Bobby Wagner, by the way.
Exactly, as well, too, which very underrated thing. That'll help their run defense, I think, too. But we won't get too far into that. We got some losers to talk about here as well, too. And not in a negative way, just teams that walked away from the draft, not as good as these other teams. We won't call them losers because no matter what, you're adding players to your team. So
we're calling them losers.
All right. So who is your draft day loser who technically isn't a loser, but is kind of a loser?
All right. Let me. Yeah. Okay. All right. So number 1, we're going to go with the San Francisco 49ers. I just don't like really anything they did. Their second pick was the Michigan kicker, Jake Moody. What? Maybe their best pick might be Ronnie Bell at 253. I don't like Jair Brown at 87 overall. I don't like Cameron Latu at 101. South Alabama's corner, Daryl Luter, not a bad pick, but not great either. TCU's linebacker D Winters, I think he was underrated in the scouting process, but I also probably think you could have got him at your 247 pick and not 216. I just, there's everything the Niners did. It just kind of seems like they reached on a lot of things, and then also just it really was kind of a cluster. Like, why are you taking a kicker with your second pick? Why? There are plenty of kickers in the free agent market. There are all the kickers in the world that'll be rookies that are undrafted. Like, you could have brought in 7 kickers to have a tryout for during offseason workouts, and you probably find a better kicker than what Jake Moody will end up being. Because I'm sorry, but he is not McPherson. He is not any of the kickers we've seen drafted in the last 10 years, 20 years. So, like, I don't like this. I don't like what the Niners did at all.
Yeah, that was kind of a tough one as well, too, because when I look at it, I'm like, I know you don't have a lot of picks, and that's kind of not what you're there for, but if you're going to take a kicker, it better be like Evan McPherson or something like that. You probably could have taken another player to play special teams or something like that, or a flyer on one of these quarterbacks, since Lord knows what's going to happen with your quarterback position this year. Like, they did not have a very strong draft. They didn't have a lot to work with, but they did not make the most of it, if that makes sense either. So I'd agree with that. They had a very questionable draft. And looking at mine, I kind of want to say the Lions because of taking Jahmyr Gibbs so high and Jack Campbell. But Dan Bryant Branch in the second round's like it almost just bounces out. Just swap them for me and you're good at that point. Kind of want to go with the Jets, but at the same time, Pittman in the second round fits your need, and Will McDonald, we have no idea. So I wish they had taken Nolan Smith. I digress. So I'm going to take one that's going to kick you right in the nuts, and I'm going to say the Dallas Cowboys were kind of a draft loser. I like Nolan Smith. He was in my top 50, but I don't think that's the pick to make there. That felt like a panic pick because your boy Dalton Kincaid was already gone. That's what it kind of felt like, is the Bills stolen from you and you panicked and took Mozzie Smith, who really good player, fits a need, will eat up blockers, help stop the run. You're moving Micah Parsons to full-time defensive end, which you kind of knew, you had to have known that going in. So what I would have liked them to do is to have grabbed, if you weren't going to get that tight end, I want to see you grab an edge to play opposite him as well. Because DeMarcus Lawrence is fine, but he's getting older. Like, you have a lot of rotation. Nolan Smith was right there, who comps to Micah Parsons, who in our big board, that was my comp for. Can you imagine having those two on the outside in a division with Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones, mobile running quarterbacks? Good luck getting the edge on those two.
I won't have to imagine it next year because I'll get to watch the Philadelphia Bulldogs with him on the outside.
Well, that's fine. I'm saying imagine him and then Micah Parsons. Granted, him and Hassan Reddick is not too far behind, but him and Micah Parsons, good luck. And I think you could have got Mozzie Smith or one of those D tackles in round 2. Like, I like Mozzie Smith. It's a good player. He's honestly the one pick that I kind of liked. I just think there were better options at the time. Then I looked around 2. You took Luke Schoonmaker, the tight end out of Michigan. I know you needed a tight end. I know Dalton Kincaid was your guy. I would have preferred you've taken Michael Mayer in the first round over Luke Schoonmaker. He's an all right tight end, but he's not any different than Peyton Hendershot or Ferguson as well, too. Feels like that was just a positional fill. And late round 2, there's good players there. Like, you could have taken Josh Downs there. You could still use receiver help. I know you brought in Brandon Cooks, but put him, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup, and there's a lot of ways to go. You need another running back, technically, which they did get with Deuce Vaughn later on, which I did like that pick, not just because of the fun, heartfelt part of it, but that's a good player they got. You could have grabbed another run. You could have grabbed more defensive secondary help as well, too. I know you brought in Stephon Gilmore to go with Trayvon Diggs. A third corner is not going to hurt. There's a lot of options there, and I don't like – honestly, Mozzie Smith was fine. I would have preferred him in the second round. It's kind of everything else after that. I was left a little bit like, just kind of scratching my head. Like, Faco from San Jose State, not bad. Assam Richards from North Carolina, not bad. Eric Scott, not bad. DeMarvion O'Shawn from Texas, not bad. But if there was more left on the board that they could have worked with, and I felt like they could have done a little bit better, which teams have said that before. Like when they took Travis Frederick, they were saying, why'd you take a center? Those who didn't know, now they know. But I think this one doesn't quite add to that. I think Cowboys had an okay draft, but they definitely, when you look at what the Eagles did, when you look at what the Giants did, and when you look at what the Washington, maybe not as much, but mostly the Eagles, when you look at what they did, I think the Cowboys definitely missed an opportunity to make a significant improvement.
Yes. All of the above, yes. And that's the problem, is you just look at the draft and you're like, oh, okay. Like,
that being said, they had a knockout free agency, I should say, too, with the trades they had, like getting Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. So I won't completely shit on the Cowboys. That's your job here. But I will say the draft, when your biggest competition is your in-division rival Eagles, they came up a little short by comparison.
when you watched a team who had drafted last year, their 22 starting offensive and defensive players had drafted 20 of their 22 starters. And then you just watch them have a draft like they just had, and you're just looking at your team like, what can we do to be better? Maybe we're going to just draft, I don't know, random guys. That's because that's what it feels like. I mean, I feel like you're exactly right. And I said this the other day, and I stand by it. As soon as Dalton Kincaid got taken off the board by the Bills, it was just like panic mode. Everybody hit the panic button in that freaking Death Star of a war room. And they were just like, oh, God, what do we do? Let's our second round pick. Let's just get him right here. Mozzie Smith, that's our guy. No, that should never be the case. Like,
really good player, not the best for that spot.
Yeah, like you're exactly right. I would have taken Michael Mayer in the first round at that point in time. Like, boom, okay. Like, you already know what to do with a guy who can barely run and turn around and get to the sticks and block somebody off. Dak threw to him really well. He came out of retirement to come back and play for you, and he did well.
Trade back if you don't like that spot, because you could have got both of those guys. Teams were trying to trade up in around 1 for Will Levis. You could have slipped back and had more time to think about it. You were already picking 26, whatever it was at that point. You're not going that far back.
No, not at all. So I'll just add one more team that I had a loser, though. I'm going to go with the Chargers. I don't think they had a great draft at all. There's a whole lot of TCU on this board. I don't mind Quentin Johnson. I don't mind Darius Davis. Max Dugan, with their 239, I'm like, why? All right, I guess, whatever. Clemson's offensive tackle, Jordan McFadden, whatever. Don't really like it. Boise State's defensive tackle, Scott Matlock. Probably could have gotten him in free agency. Tulu Tuipulotu, the USC linebacker, not even ranked in my top 10 linebackers. And yet he's going in as he was at the time, I believe, linebacker number 2, maybe 3 at the time. So, yeah, don't really get that pick at all. That was my big
round 3 was a good spot for him.
Yeah, well, and then they take Dayan Henley, who was not even in my top 15 or 20 linebackers in the draft, when there were still top 5 linebackers available at that time. So I don't know, again, why you're going there in the 3rd round. So, yeah, I get you need linebackers, but, like, get good linebackers. Don't get – I don't know what linebackers they got. I really don't. I don't know what they were going for, because they're undersized. They are fast, but they're undersized. So I don't know if you're just going for that dime nickel package type of speedsters. But you're gonna keep giving up gashing runs up the middle, which has been your problem if you're the Chargers. So why would you keep doing that? I don't know. So yeah, I just don't like the Chargers draft outside of Quentin Johnson and Darius Davis, to be honest.
So I love Quentin Johnson. I think that one was a home run for him. Just where they got him and what it brings to the offense. I didn't like Tui as that 2nd round pick, especially as a smaller edge guy too. Like, he's not. Your problem is your run defense. You got to learn how to stop running backs. He doesn't really help with that. Dayan Henley, I like him. He's a good linebacker prospect. I think if Houston would have got him, he'd be defensive rookie of the year with DeMeco Ryans coaching him. He doesn't help your run defense in the same way that you need, though, because you need somebody to keep blockers off of him. That's kind of my biggest thing, is they didn't get somebody to plug up those holes necessarily. And that's kind of where I'm like, if Mozzie Smith was there in the 2nd round, so maybe the Cowboys screwed their draft up well in advance. Who knows? But I think they needed more run defensive type players, like 3 techs, 1 techs. They needed some girth on that. They needed to do what the Browns did, where they drafted more than 1,000 pounds in 3 straight players. They needed something like that. They should have grabbed DeJuan Jones and said, you're playing nose now. Go dunk on people. Since we know you can dunk a basketball, go dunk on them. That's what I think that would have, something like that. They needed some girth and size, and they didn't really get that outside of Quentin Johnson, ironically, who's now also their deep threat. So love Quentin Johnson. Darius Davis late was pretty good. Then between, I kind of agree with you. There's a little bit to be desired.
A lot of it to be desired.
Quite a bit to be desired. But I'm excited for Justin Herbert and Kellen Moore next year. You have now Mike Williams on one side, Keenan Allen in the slot, and now Quentin. They're going to have to score 40 because they're only going to get 4 possessions a game, so they have to score on each one of them because the other team's going to run the clock down. But I like their chances to actually score, and praise the Lord, we get to see Justin Herbert uncork that cannon a couple of times a game. Now, if there's somebody who runs above a 5-second 40 out there on the outside besides Mike Williams.
So I was about to say, at least that will be on the field since Mike Williams will be injured.
Exactly. I love Keenan Allen, but he's not really burning people these days as well, too. Mike Williams really isn't burning people either. He's just down there and dunking on them. But now
and more importantly, can catch the ball when they're down there. Because there's Jordan Palmer who can run that fast, but he just can't catch the ball.
And he doesn't quite. And I like Quentin Johnson because now if he's Justin Herbert has the ability of, all right, Reeves 1, 2, and 3 are open. All right, Quentin Johnson's out there somewhere, and he doesn't have to just try and throw a perfect back shoulder fade or throw an alley-oop. He can just let it fly, and maybe Quentin Johnson will run underneath it too. And we saw a little bit of in person. He can roll to the right, throw a bomb back across left. Now we have somebody who can kind of run underneath it and score. And he can throw that drag route, and like he did against Michigan in the playoff game, take it 60 yards. So I think Johnson gives Justin Herbert a little bit of ease ability, and it's not just check down to Austin Eckler. I think it's going to open up their offense a bunch, which they're going to need because it looks like they're not stopping the run again. So they're going to have to score quick, fast, and in a hurry a lot this year, which, you know what, they might just do. But I agree with you. The middle of that draft, meh. Yeah, just very meh. It wasn't their finest hour, but that's going to lead us now into the back half of the main event where, you know what, we got roughly 1 year till the draft, so why not go completely way too early? Our offensive rookie and defensive rookie of the year predictions before those teams have even necessarily got their numbers situated as well. I'll let you go first. We'll both do offense. Then we'll both do defense. Lead the way. What do you think for offensive rookie of the year? Way too damn early to choose.
I'm going to go Bijan Robinson, offensive rookie of the year. I think the probably the favorite choices are CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, obviously, Anthony Richardson potentially. I'm going to go a little different. I think Atlanta stays run heavy and goes Bijan Robinson a lot. And as long as he stays healthy, I think we'll see kind of what we saw from Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker last year, where they were just explosive when they got the ball. I think Bijan Robinson has that opportunity because Atlanta isn't a bad run blocking team. I mean, if Cordell Patterson can give you 1,000 yards, you know what? Maybe Bijan Robinson can give you 1,500. So we'll have to wait and see.
Plus, in the pass game, you know he's going to get some work while they avoid throwing the ball to Kyle Pitts at all costs. So I like that one as well. I'm going to hammer home off of your pick, and it's going to be a little bit of a homer pick too, but I think Anthony Richardson has a really good case just because of his ability to score touchdowns with his legs. The amount of times I think they're going to do that Jalen Hurts thing, they might only win 6 games, but I don't think Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, they're going to be great, but I think they don't have as much of a supporting cast, and they're not leading their teams to the playoffs. Will Levis, we'll see if he plays. The receivers, none of them quite feel like a Jamar Chase or anything quite like that. And so I'm going to go with Anthony Richardson because I can see him having a similar rookie year to what Cam had, where it's like 20 passing touchdowns, 10 rushing touchdowns, where the wins aren't really there, but the final numbers look really good. And in that Shane Steichen offense with Jonathan Taylor's back there too, it's going to make things really easy. And I think he's going to get so much better down the stretch. He might make that nice little burst in the last month that kind of sways voters' minds. So I'll go with Anthony Richardson too, because I think he's also going to have the highlight reel plays. I think it's going to be the quote unquote sexy pick by the end of it, because it's going to be the one you see all the highlights on Twitter and stuff like that. They'll probably only win 6 games, but I think they're going to look really good doing it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to piggyback off your top draft and go with Anthony Richardson. And we're going to see number 5 in the end zone a lot. So that's what I'm going to roll with. So now for defensive rookie year, this is where it gets a little bit fun. I'll let you go ahead and lead the reins on this one, because I have an idea. But then again, I always think I have an idea with your pick, and I'm always dead wrong.
All right, so I'm gonna go probably a little different here with defensive rookie of the year, but I'm gonna actually go Christian Gonzalez with New England. I wanted to say Devin Witherspoon. I think obviously he has a great opportunity there in Seattle, but I do think Christian Gonzalez, with the Sith Lord as his commander in chief, if you will, is gonna be just that exceptional in New England's offense, in New England's defense. I mean, he might as well be playing offense because he's gonna be just like, oh, pick, and then he's going to use his 4.3 speed to go and return it for touchdowns. So yeah, I don't see a way that Christian Gonzalez doesn't at least end up as a conversation piece for the defensive rookie of the year, as long as he stays healthy. I think he's going to be up there. So yeah, give me Christian Gonzalez defensive rookie of the year. Not
gonna lie, that was my pick, so that kind of throws me in a bind here. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with Mozzie Smith. No, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be something though?
Don't do that.
I'm gonna take him on even worse. I think it's gonna be Nolan Smith too, because I had him as a top 10 player on our big board. You can't double team him under any circumstance with where he's at now. And I think he's gonna end up with like that 10, 11, 12 sacks, even in just situational rush, just kind of like what Aldon Smith did with the 49ers his rookie year. His only job is gonna be use your freakish speed and go hit the guy with the ball, which at Georgia, he's a top 10 player going into the year until he got hurt. He was chasing down Bryce Young last year in the open field. He's a sensational prospect. I think he's going to be used similar to what Micah Parsons was, which is why I think the Eagles were literally pooping themselves when he was sitting there. So I think he's going to have a great rookie year, and he might not get the votes because he's on the Eagles. They'll be like, well, his job's easy. But I think he's going to put up the numbers to do. So I'm going to go with Nolan Smith, who I've been the biggest supporter of since basically when we were doing color cast games with him last year. So I'm going to stick with it now. Even though I hate the fact that he's an Eagle right now.
Yeah, no, I like that. I pick. Also, give me a dark horse here in Lucas Van Ness.
That's a really good dark horse.
I feel like, I don't know, I might expect something special out of him, especially in Green Bay. There's a lot to be done in Green Bay.
I'll throw in a dark horse of my own too. I'm going to go with Emmanuel Forbes, the guy that everyone is doubting just because he has a weird knack for getting the ball and putting it in the end zone. Granted, the way he gets picks, some tip picks, some weird goofiness, but he feels like everyone wrote him off. Maybe he's not going to write back. Who knows? And in that division, Dak sometimes will put it up. Jalen will sometimes put up. Daniel Jones will sometimes put up. He might have a lot of opportunities to replicate his touchdowns he did in college. So I'll take Emmanuel Forbes as a dark horse, but not someone I'm putting a whole lot of money on.
Yeah, in that case, maybe throw Deonte Banks up there as well because he's playing now in that division. So who knows what any corner that's playing against the Cowboys at some point in time probably has a good chance to.
Hell, you know what? Let's throw Mozzie Smith in there because he's going to get a lot of time stopping the run coming off the picks. We could do this all day, but I think it's going to be an interesting, definitely an interesting race to come back to watch. And we'll come back to this. If any of our picks are dead on, we will come right back to it, especially if we will be cutting this. Oh, I know you already you're marking this day on the calendar as well, too. But that'll do it for our main event, which is going to now take us into Kelcey's favorite part of every show. That is, of course, Crunch Time, brought to you by our good friends over at Outlier, outlier.bet/hilo sports. Free 7-day trial. Give yourself a chance to bet smarter, not harder, and win a little bit of money as well, too. Find some odds, trends, and everything you need to spend your money wisely. And for Crunch Time, we got some tomfoolery to look at. I'm going to keep mine quick. We got the return of an all-time great fighter, Henry Cejudo, this weekend, fighting to take back the 135-pound belt against Aljamain Sterling. And he's already laid out a plan where he wants to win that belt back, defend it once, then go up to fight at 145, try and get his third UFC title in a different division to go along with the gold medal. So return of Henry Cejudo plus some really, really good fights on the undercard should be a very good one to pay attention to. Now they got that out of the way. You got it. We talked about fisticuffs. You got a mess to clean up, though.
Yeah, so we're going to go Antonio Brown. If you guys don't know, Antonio Brown, the legend that was AB at one point in time, now owns is partial owner of, actually, we don't even know what type of owner he is of the Albany Empire because it was originally reported that he purchased 47.5% of the Empire on March 2nd. If you guys don't know, the Albany Empire are an Arena Football League team, so that is what they do. So one of the better, arena teams actually as well. They did just win a championship last year. So now, not only do we not know whether he actually purchased 47.5%, but Antonio Brown himself has come out and said that he owns 100% of the team. And there's been problems. Go figure that Antonio Brown owns a team and there's problems with said team. Most notably, the team has not paid players or coaches since April 21st. Mind you, Antonio Brown took over on March 2nd. So about a month after he took over, a month and a half, they have not been paid. They're supposed to be paid every Friday during the season, but no one received their direct deposit on April 28th. On Sunday, the Empire played the Carolina Cobras without payment and suffered a loss. One day later, head coach Damon Ware left the team because of the missed payments. Now the Empire's acting presidents, he has told one of the newspapers that the missed payments stem from an issue with payroll processors, which occurred when the former owner sold his shares of the team to, obviously, Antonio Brown. Well, now they have no head coach, but don't fret. No. They brought back their former head coach recently. By the way, still have not paid players yet, but they have also suspended 6 of their best players and due to an altercation on the team bus in Carolina after that game. And they've been not only suspended, but they did not receive their room keys to their rooms at the Albany Holiday Inn when they returned back to Albany. After that, police have been called to aggravated harassment at the hotel. Investigation is still ongoing. We still don't know whether Antonio Brown is making payments. The Empire 1-2 through their 3 games, just all this stuff stemmed out. And then now there's rumors that Antonio Brown might start playing for the Albany Empire. Because why not? There was also, by the way, he tweeted that he was going to sign with the Baltimore Ravens, and that didn't work out either. So I don't know what's going to happen with Antonio Brown anymore. But right now, it is an absolute mess for one of the better teams that plays in the Arena League. And I don't know how much crazier this can get. By the way, he is partial owner with his father. So, yeah. It's getting crazy. It's getting crazy in Albany.
Business was booming, or I guess it wasn't. We'll have to wait and see. That's an absolute mess to keep an eye on as well, too. Hopefully it doesn't come at the cost of the Albany Empire. So hopefully their season doesn't have to fold because it hopefully gets worked out sooner rather than later. But something we'll keep an eye on as well, too. But we appreciate you all for joining us here this Wednesday evening, or if you're checking us out on one of your favorite podcast apps as well, too. Go ahead and let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, and everything in between as well. We appreciate you spending some time with us, and we will see you all again next week.